me. Moving on to, where are we? Reports. Or mutual aid, excuse me.
Yes.
I thought we did that.
All right, this item is a request for a resolution authorizing the county administrator to sign joint aid agreements with other localities. The Code of Virginia, section 15.2-1300.1 of the code as amended in 1950 provides that a locality may by ordinance or resolution authorize its chief administrative officer to arrange for the provision of aid to other localities or receipt of aid from other localities in situations where a locality does not declare a local emergency, including approval by the chief administrator of agreements with other localities subject to the availability of resources. This came about because we lost our building code official, and the staff we currently have were uncertified to do certain things. So we reached out to Amherst County to see if we could utilize some of their staff for these things, and they were uncomfortable in doing so unless we had a mutual aid agreement in place. So therefore, we are currently requesting that the board provide a blanket authorization that we can enter into these mutual aid agreements, and then also to specifically enter into this mutual aid agreement with Amherst County for the provision of local building department, building official services, and erosion and sediment control services pursuant to the applicable code sections. And we also have another memorandum of understanding in the works having to do with the Blue Ridge Trail, which is partially in Nelson and partially in Amherst. We have some deck repair that needs to be done, and the two counties would like to work together, via this memorandum of understanding in order to complete that work. So that would also apply to that memorandum as well.
So they would just apply to these two specific things?
Well, the resolution in front of you, the therefore be it resolved section does give blanket authorization to the county administrator to enter into mutual aid agreements. But these are two that are currently under consideration that would need to be signed.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. So we need a motion in the affirmative unless there's any further questions for resolution R 2022-59.
Is that
going to be able to do it anytime she needs to, or?
Within reason.
Yeah.
Within reason.
It
Yeah,
should
well,
allow
she's got
me
to
to
please
do it.
us.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. It should allow me to do it anytime, but of course I would report any use of this authorization to the board.
Sure.
Be wise.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Barton. Do we have support?
Second.
Support from Mr. Harvey. Any discussion? Any discussion? We'll do a motion by acclamation, or a vote by acclamation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any abstentions, objections? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the next item, reports. Candy.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So I had a note to add this to my administrative report, and that has to do with the bridge decking repair on the tunnel trail, not the tunnel trail, the rail trail. I always get those two mixed up. We do have $30,000 in the budget for those repairs, and how it would work is the county would pay the $30,000 in cost, and Amherst County would provide the labor for that project. And they would also provide 2 years worth of use of a boom axe along the entire length of the trail. Amherst County does own a boom axe, whereas we do not. And so they would, as part of this agreement, would clear both sides of the trail once or twice a year for the next couple of years. So once we get that MOU signed, then they can go ahead and order the materials, and I think it's going to take possibly 75 to 90 days to get the lumber once ordered, and then they can begin work once the boards arrive. So we'll have those repairs complete this fiscal year. One of the other little notes I have that's not in my report either is we are currently having some functionality issues with the county's website. I don't know the extent of it, but I do know that the framework behind the website is about 10 years old, and it's starting to cause some glitches. So we're looking into what might need to be done to fix that. So we'll be reporting more on that in the future. All right, so back to my standard report here as far as COVID-19.
Just before you go on, I'm just curious, the Blue Ridge Trail, do you know approximately how much of the trail is in Nelson and how much is in Amherst? I'm just curious.
Mostly Amherst.
I think I would have to
I
look
think
that
it is
up.
mostly Amherst. I'm looking at the
Hate to
map,
guess on
you
that.
know, and it's-
So I can tell you, because I rode my bike on it.
I mean, the first 2 miles are in Nelson.
Yes,
From there, it crisscrosses a couple of times, I think.
that's,
So that 5 mile section,
it crisscrosses with the river.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the other side might have 4 in Amherst in a mile.
I think it's
or so.
about 8 miles total. Is
Yeah.
that-
I thought it was 7 point, yeah,
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So I think it's about 3 in Nelson, 5 in Amherst, maybe.
Yeah.
Like that.
just for information.
Okay.
Just curious, thank you.
Sure. All right, so according to the Virginia Department of Health, Nelson County as of October 7th had 2 new cases reported in the last week of COVID-19. We had a 7-day average of new daily cases of a negative 0.1. There have been 259 cases and 2 deaths over the past 13 weeks as of October 7th. And then for the CDC, our county's community risk level has changed from medium to low. So their guidance for the low risk level is to stay up to date with COVID-19 vaccines, get tested if you have symptoms, wear a mask if you have symptoms, positive test or exposure to someone with COVID-19, and wear a mask on public transportation. And obviously, you may choose to wear a mask at any time as additional precautions to protect yourself and others. An update on the comprehensive plan. I always want to say our project website is www.nelson2042.com. Our next public participation opportunity will be a public input results forum to be held October 16th, 2022. And this was rescheduled from October 2nd due to the anticipated inclement weather from Hurricane Ian. Then there will be 4 joint work sessions of the Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission on October 25th, January 18th, March 15th, and May 17th. Another Board of Supervisors work session is to be scheduled in November for discussion on the Larkin property acquisition and development. At that time, the aggregated public input from the comprehensive plan will be known and be considered, as well as any follow-up from the first session. The Courthouse Termite Remediation Project began September 16th and was completed by Jamerson Lewis Construction on September 30th at a cost of $13,250, with only $750 of the $3,000 MEP allowance being used. So that project is now complete. The county was notified by the U.S. Department of Treasury that it will receive 2 annual payments of $50,000 in federal fiscal years 2022 and 2023 under the American Rescue Plan Act for a total of $100,000. These are local assistance and tribal consistency funds, or LATCF. These have been predominantly awarded to counties who receive federal payments in lieu of taxes or PILT funds. Counties must apply for these funds through the Treasury portal by January 31st of 2023. And recipients of these funds may use them on any governmental purpose other than lobbying activities. Per the Treasury guidance, these funds may be used to meet the non-federal cost share or matching requirements of other federal programs. And what came to mind in that instance was possibly using those funds for matching of the Gladstone Depot project potentially. Of course, that would be up to the board. In terms of our new office building, the building committee met with PMA Architecture to review their conceptual design findings based upon a detailed spacing study and functional space requirements. PMA developed a high and a low preliminary opinion of probable construction costs of 12.6 million on the high side and 9.6 million on the lower side. Using a 5 to 10 year plan staff size of 30 for the Department of Social Services, which would require about 9,188 square feet. They also used a 5 to 10 year plan staff size of 10 for building inspections and planning and zoning, which would require, my mouth is not working today, 4,666 square feet for a total square footage of 13,854 square feet. The difference is explained by PMA, and the high and the low cost correlates to the cost associated with either a 50-year building life or a 20 to 30-year building life. These cost estimates vary greatly from previous estimates due to the current higher cost construction climate, resulting in a higher cost per square foot. And also an in-depth analysis of Department of Social Services staffing that indicated that previous staffing levels used were underestimated. And as was the required individual office space needed to accommodate the standard furnishings needed in each of the offices. So this resulted in a total square footage difference of about 4,254 square feet from the preliminary estimates. I guess in defense of the previous architect's estimates, it was a pretty high level review of numbers that had been provided to them many years before, and they pretty much just updated the square foot costs and applied an escalation factor to their previously estimated total square footage. PMA will be here to present these findings and their methodology to the board at the November meeting, along with an opinion of probable construction costs for each of the departments separately. Next steps will be to discuss the building life level desired, proceeding or not with building for both departments, and proceeding with a more in-depth soils investigation, which would provide more information on site development costs. Just in looking at social services only as a percentage of the total square footage estimated for both departments, theirs is about 66.3% of the total. So applying that to the cost estimate range, you would have a low end of 6.4 million and a high end of 8.4. And that's just some rough math on my part.
If we could, just real quick, in reference to the DSS building, Skip, you were able to attend towards the end, I wasn't able to stay. And I think one thing that we definitely observed, and it's something that's critical that we as a board note, is the estimates we got are about 100% off. Right, Skip?
I would say that.
And I think it is probably imperative that the county focus on the DSS building and potentially look at not doing the zoning and building department, but look at fixing and not re-maintaining, but updating the McGinnis building. I think that is probably a stature we need to make. And just prioritize it. Otherwise, we're looking at an additional $3 million.
I agree. Is this time to talk about that?
I think it's a good time, or not.
I'm sure preliminarily,
We save it for directives.
next month when PMA's here would be a great time as well. They'll have a lot more explanation than I have here in terms of how they came up with what they came up with and their thoughts on.
Yeah, I mean,
costs, but-
it was shocking. I mean, we expected it to be more, but we didn't expect it to be. And the estimation of the size of the building was off.
Yeah.
Can we say that people who gave this the estimate did a bad job?
I don't know, but I would say what my thought process was of the initial cost was nowhere near where they ended up. And I mean, that was a ticket shock factor that's pretty serious.
In defense of the previous architect that gave us the first estimates, I mean, I think they did what they were asked to do, and that was just to update some old numbers that we had, and they were not tasked with the in-depth investigation of the space needs of each of the departments for the next 5 to 10 years. which resulted in there being a need for more square footage,
Right, I mean, there were a couple of mistakes that were made.
seemingly so.
One, the size of the building that would be required, the size of the office space,
Yeah.
and then the price.
I mean, they were asked to kind of give a ballpark, whereas when we hired PMA, this was, we're delving into this where we want the details, we're gonna get, what the staffing levels are currently, what they think they're gonna be in 5 years and in 10 years. The previous firm did use smaller office sizes, which really are compatible with the furniture needed to be in those offices in order for them to be functional. And this firm used an interior designer to look at the furniture needed for each of the spaces and then build the room around the furniture, which added some additional space.
But, we both agree that the building is still a priority.
DSS is a priority, it needs to be
Do
done.
it.
It's just whether we need to do that addition. So I would just encourage you guys at your next meeting, strongly consider that
And you
scenario.
think about it,
Strongly, and maybe give them that, you already gave them that
And
preliminary.
PMA is gonna be here in November in order to, report this in more detail, as I said, and then get the board's direction at that point as far as, do we want them to go, further into the soils analysis of the site, which could, reduce some of the site costs they originally estimate. It's a pretty high level estimate. There's a lot of work still to be done. So these are very high level numbers right now.
Are we prepared to say that we're
Not yet.
not gonna put the building?
Just go through the scenario that Kenny just mentioned, just go to the next meeting and say, this is a scenario we may need to suggest to the board. I think that's the plan of action.
I mean, I do think if we are married to this site, which we don't really have another site for this
This is as
building,
cheap as it's gonna get.
going forward probably with the in-depth soils analysis, at least, would be a
Yes.
good.
We need
thing
Is
to
that
do.
across the road?
Cal Hill.
Yes.
I've never heard of any soil problems over there.
It's a little rocky. It does not.
Yeah,
Anything you can
Yeah, but
overcome.
not the biggest problem.
You can overcome it.
yeah, they just want to investigate too how close to the surface the rock is there, because there is some rock, but topographically, the site seems to lay out pretty well. There's a plateau area where the buildings and parking areas could lay in pretty nicely, where they don't see a lot of excavation being necessary. So that's
Sure.
encouraging.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. Thank you, Kenny.
All right, want to wish congratulations to Maureen Kelly of our Tourism and Economic Development Department. She has secured a $45,000 community business launch grant. The local match for that is $11,250 for a total program funding of $56,250. The CDL grant is administered through the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development and seeks to fill vacant storefronts with community-based expansion or startup ventures. The local CDL programs train entrepreneurs and small business owners on business planning practices, culminating in a group of finalists pitching their ideas to a panel of judges, with winners receiving grant funding and support services from the community to kickstart their new ventures. So I also provided some other detail on that grant, and we're working to schedule a kickoff meeting with the HCD for those grant funds. As you heard earlier today, our Commonwealth Attorney's Office secured the drug court grant in the amount of $699,640 from the Department of Justice. This is to be spread over 4 years for implementation of an adult drug court in the county. The required local match for this grant is $309,696, and that's in total. County administration and finance staff will be meeting with Commonwealth's attorney staff in the very near future to look at the particulars of the award for budgeting and then implementation going forward. So there's a lot to be done to get that up and going, and we look forward to working with them on that.
Just a question, that, just lost it, the 309,000, is that over 4 years as well?
I assume it is, but I haven't looked at it closely enough to know for sure, but that would make sense. Yeah. Okay. The Virginia Tourism Corporation, or VATC, released 2021 economic impacts of tourism in the state and its localities. The 2021 tourism spending for Nelson County, as reported by VTC, reached approximately $83 million. Direct economic impact and spending by industry was as follows: $33.3 million in lodging, which includes second home spending, $17.8 million food and beverage, $9.1 million retail, $11.9 million recreation, and $10.8 million transport, which includes both ground and air transportation. In terms of short-term rental, staff is working with Jared Rutherford in scheduling the convening of the overall work group on this subject, hopefully in November. There's no new information to report on the Renaissance Ridge housing development. That status hasn't changed as far as I am aware. And then lastly, staff reports were provided with the October 11th agenda document for your review. And that's all I have, unless you have questions.
Excellent. Any questions for Candy at this moment?
I was gonna bring this up during reports, but you might be able to report on the meeting that we had with Mr. Miller and the Service Authority.
Okay, so myself, Ms. Spivey, Mr. Reed, Mr. McSwain, and George Miller and Jennifer Fitzgerald of the Service Authority just met recently to talk about all of the different projects that are going on, the potential to transfer the Putney River system to the Service Authority, their participation in the comprehensive plan and what their capacity requirements are and how certain things could be done potentially to increase their capacity, particularly in the Livingston and south direction down to Colleen and the southern end of the county. A specific suggestion they had, or something that we might want to think about in looking at the use of the Larkin property, is the potential to develop a reservoir there, which could serve a dual purpose and be a potential swimming area as well, much like Lake Monarchan is over in Nelly's Ward. Of course, none of us are geologists or hydrologists and know if that could actually come to fruition, but it's something I think that might be worth looking into. There are many hurdles in terms of turning the Pine River system over to the Service Authority, one of them being rates. So I think those rates haven't been changed since, I think, 2000. You recall the year? I don't have that
I think it's been 10 years.
note with me, so a good while. So I think the board should look at potentially increasing those rates regardless of what happens with ownership of the system, at least in the coming fiscal year. That's something we'll be bringing back to you to look at. Leaving anything out?
No, I think that's great. Thank you for doing that. That's, that's better than I would probably report it. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Candy.
All right, thank
All right.
you so much.
Moving on to board reports. Mr. Barton.
Job board hasn't met yet.
No.
And
I can't be.
workforce board meets only quarterly, and I talked to you last night.
I cannot be your alternate, by the way.
You cannot, we talked to Ken.
Perfect. All right, Mr. Harvey. Mr. Reed.
Nothing else?
Ms. Barr. Only thing I had was a PDC meeting. I guess you were there. Nothing major happened. Regional Housing Partnership had a meeting this morning talking about doing some fundraisers and whatnot. The meeting is now, the date is in March. Looking forward to that. We got a lot of speakers talking, and the theme of it is coming back home. So there is a target about, once again, the rural displacement of families and how to get folks to move back to their communities. So big emphasis on that.
I have a report. I'm not sure it goes under
Are you going to ask us to do
directives or
something?
correspondence, but I can do it now.
Just do it now.
Okay. I got a call, a couple weeks ago from a guy called Tanger, who is, part of the Friends of the Rivers of Virginia and part of the Blue Trail, which is the Blue Way Trail, which is about opening up the rivers of Virginia to, for people's use. The Blue Way exists in the Roanoke River, on the Warrior River, on the James River, west of Lynchburg. And these guys, and another person who I met with was part of the group of float fishermen of Virginia. And they were putting in on Allen's Creek down in Gladstone. And a couple weeks ago, they were putting in, the woman who owned the land said, I'm not gonna let you guys use this place to reach the James River. And that concerned them, and they went around and they found out who owned the property that would enable them to get to the river from Allen's Creek. And they found out that Weyerhaeuser owned the land. Now these guys, which attached to fishermen and the Blue Way, want to purchase 2 or 3 acres from Weyerhaeuser. And what they asked me is if I would talk to the board and get the board to support this resolution. And he is willing, he's going to come in, it's going to be on the agenda for the next meeting and explain in much better detail, much better than I can, what he's interested in. The resolution, the Nelson County Board of Supervisors strongly supports outdoor recreation for its residents and visitors. And talks about public access. All he wants us to do, he doesn't want any money. All the organization wants us to do is to say to Weyerhaeuser, we're in favor of them purchasing that land. And that access to the James River will be made for people from anywhere, from Nelson County. So that's all he wants from us. And he's gonna come next month and explain in more detail exactly what he is.
If you just get
But I
him,
want to alert you to that.
if you just get him to talk to Candy and make sure all the details are ironed out and make sure there's nothing else we need to do through Phil, we'll put it on November agenda.
Okay.
New and unfinished business.
It seems like a wonderful thing, and it's, talking to Joanne Absher too, she knows all about the Blue Way and making as much of the James River. You look at Nelson County and you look at the Blue Ridge, but the other side of the county is the James River, and that's also very beautiful and has real opportunity for
All right.
Some development in terms of tourism.
All right, anybody else? I don't remember where I was at with Regional Housing Partnership, but March, be there in March, I'll send out the dates. Let's go ahead and move on to appointments. We currently have a zoning appeals. Amanda, I don't believe we have anybody who's applied for that yet, right?
We do not yet.
Okay.
We're advertising that.
The library committee, we did have,
We got that today, so that's been provided. Jennifer Page,
Mr. Harvey.
fourth district resident, she actually has been a librarian. She knows Miss Susan Huffman, the librarian. Ms. Huffman actually helped connect her to us, so.
Great. Mr. Harvey, this lady, she's in your district. It's Jennifer Page. She's been a librarian. You want to put her on there?
Yeah.
We have a motion from Mr. Harvey. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Reed. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll do a vote by acclamation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions, objections? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. All right, that's all the appointments we got until we get some more people planned for the BZA. Correspondence. Skip. Mr. Harvey? Ernie?
No, sir.
Mr. Farm?
No.
I have none. Directives. Mr. Barton? Mr. Harvey? Mr. Reed? Mr. Farm? Moving on to closed session. Mr. Reed, can you read that for us?
I would like to move that Nelson County Board of Supervisors convene in closed session to discuss the following as permitted by Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711. Discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body, and consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members pertaining to actual litigation, where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Parr, any discussion? Any discussion? We'll do a roll call vote.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Martin? Mr. Carr?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes. All right, let's shut her down.